Warren Tang, and thanks to Sharon Pisani, our project officer, organising all of us a huge asset, Warren Tangi.
Hi, I'm Sharon. I'm the project officer for this project. I joined in March, and in May we had our project launch. Soon after that we started with our well-being workshops. Our well-being workshops are there to get close to the community and build a community survey which will judge the well-being of the community as well as what we can do with the space that Community has recently acquired, which is the school where the Digital Fèis is happening this weekend. After that we also had our Gaelic workshops online and our Gaelic walks in August. These were 3 separate heritage walks which looked at different heritage spaces of North Uist. They were entirely in Gaelic, and apart from getting people out in nature, which is a very good thing for their well-being, it was a good opportunity for people to hear Gaelic as well as learn about their heritage. Then our last strand is the digital strand, and throughout this project we have been digitizing artifacts. This Digital Fèis today marks the main event for the digital strand, and during this event we have been asking people to bring their objects and digitizing them. We've used 3D digitizing where we've created 3D digital objects which will be available in a gallery online, as well as we have recorded the stories behind these objects, because it's important for any society and any museum that if you have objects in your collection, you do not just have them as a name and a photo, but you also know the story behind them, so that the story can also be recorded along with the object. Another part of the digitization was the heritage walks, where we wanted to create virtual walks so that people who couldn't join the walks themselves, maybe people who cannot go out of their homes, or people who are not on North Uist and wish to experience the heritage of North Uist, they could access these virtual walks online. So we've created a portal at the moment. We have done it for the Untitled, but the other 2 walks are also being digitized. Ian and I, during our trip here, we went to the walk location, starting from the very top of the walk, and shot 360 panoramas along the whole route. We connected these along with a voiceover by Archie in Gaelic, as well as English information we had previously. And this can be accessed online, and people can start the walk and walk along the whole route virtually. At the end of it, we have digital reconstructions as well of Dunan sticker, which show how the Dun in the island looked like in the Iron Age. And we also have different media related to Dunan sticker. So over the years, through different projects, we have recorded videos of, for instance, kids telling the story of the sticker. We have different material from our archaeology projects as well, and these are all collected together in this online hub. This is available not only online, but also as a virtual reality app and an application that can be downloaded on a smartphone or a tablet. So it's made sure that the walks are very accessible to everyone, even those who are not able to join us in August. We are looking forward to more activities as we approach the second half of this project. Thank you.
Hi, is Moran Tang, the Gordon Wells, Gordon Wells from Sailshire, who will be sharing highlights of Gaelic storytelling from Guan and Yellen, an important heritage website.
Hello, my name is Gordon Wells, and I'm the project coordinator for Sailshire, the Inter-University Gaelic Research Project. But with regard to this particular project, Aire with Community Uishtua, I'm really involved from the point of view of Guan and Yellen, or Island Voices, which is the Aberdeen language capture and curation project, which has been working with Community Uishtua over a period of years now. having done various collaborative recording projects before and put them online on the Island Voices website. So delighted to work again with the members of the Local History Society and the new project Aire, where from the UHI point of view, the Sailship point of view, we're focusing in on the intersection between the health of Gaelic, as it were, in the local islands and the overall well-being focus of the project itself. So that's quite an interesting thing. We're working with partners, obviously, and it's been useful, very useful, to be able to exchange with colleagues from Aberdeen University and from St Andrews University about how what they're bringing to the project can usefully contribute, if you like, to a kind of a holistic approach to it, but each of us with our own specialism. So looking at it from the Gaelic point of view, there's been a couple of strands really, and I'm really going to speak to just one of them, which is the online recording. But there's another strand which Archie Campbell will probably talk about in relation to actual physical walks out in the environment. So from the online capture and curation of the local language, from that point of view, I can say that we've got experience of doing that kind of stuff, and it's an interesting way of approaching the broader question which lies behind a lot of issues now concerning Gaelic in relation to the degree to which the use of Gaelic is declining in the community. So what we're trying to do from the Island Voices point of view is actually capture some of this spoken language, because who knows in a few years' time how much of it we're still going to be hearing. And as I say, we've been doing that for 10, 15 years now, in association with Comunidad along with other both individuals and groups in the community. And that's an ongoing project and will continue. And I'll say a little bit more later about how we plan to take that forward. At the same time, we are very conscious of the state of play with regard to Gaelic in the community. And with my Sailship hat on, the important thing to mention here is the recent study, a very comprehensive study of Gaelic use in island communities, including North Uist. So we've already run one Zoom meeting with Comunidad where we invited speakers in who were on the writing team for this comprehensive research project, and who produced a book 2 years ago now on the Gaelic crisis in the vernacular community. That's a major piece of work, and what it seeks to do, I think, is to just establish pretty, how can I put it, incontrovertibly, let's say, that the state of health of the Gaelic language, if you want to put it in those kind of metaphorical terms, is not good. So what they're showing is that Gaelic speakers, or Gaelic speech, is declining as a daily, everyday part of life in Uist. That's something which probably anyone with an interest and a favourable attitude towards Gaelic is going to find not something to be welcomed. So there's a whole question around that. We now are in possession of facts and figures which show what's happening, and if we want to do something about it, then we need to be building on sound foundations rather than on wishful thinking, I suppose, is the fundamental point there. So we have facts and figures now to show what is the state of play with regard to Gaelic use in the community. So that has implications particularly for organisations, policy officials and so on and so forth, who want to make an effective intervention in that trajectory in terms of turning it around on the back of a more favourable policy environment. And that's important work which will continue. And if there's one message that comes out of that study in terms of recommendations for going forward, it would be that if policy intervention is going to be effective, then it has to be based on as close as possible an engagement with people who actually speak the language as possible. It's not good enough for policy to be dreamt up at a distance from the community by people who don't necessarily have a good understanding or experience of actually living with the reality of language shift to English in their own community. So there's a strong plea there coming from that research project to get back to the residents and the speakers who actually are living through this experience of language shift. And I'm sure that there's going to be a lot to tease out going forward in relation to how that experience of decline in the use of your own language, if you like, can impact more broadly in terms of general well-being, both on an individual basis and on a community-wide basis. But running parallel to that kind of policy-focused work, there's a need to actually think about capturing the way people actually speak. So that's the other half of the equation, if you like, and the way that we're going about this. We focus on policy, but we also want to be practical and work with people in the community in terms of actually capturing their language. And we've been doing that, as I say, over a period of years. The plans after the summer will be to do some more of this, in experimenting with a new format, whereby we look at some of our previous films and then we talk about them. And this is where lockdown and all that kind of stuff has actually had an effect which is perhaps unexpected, but in some ways beneficial, in that our feeling is that people are much more willing and accustomed to working online and through Zoom, etc., than previously they might have been. So we've done some experimental work using English language with clips from Norman MacLean's series of recordings, and looking at what he was saying and then discussing it amongst a group of interested parties. And what we hope to do after the summer would be to take that further, select some interesting looking videos from out of our archive, just short clips, maybe 5-10 minutes, and then looking at those clips, engaging in discussion and debate in Gaelic with local members of the community, maybe members of the historical society itself, or maybe not. And so recording their views, their reactions, or any memories that looking at this particular clip may stimulate. And that itself then becomes another part of the ongoing archive of collected Gaelic recordings from the North East community.
as part of the project, we ran three walks in sites of historic interest in North Uist. There was the Campbell and Trianach in Carnish, and then the week after that we went to Baspa Langish and Popelheen, and finally we had a walk to Doon and Steeker in the northeast corner of the island, really. And the purpose of the walks was to get together and to enjoy a good walk. To me, it's one of the most important things of is just to get people together, socially. And I know myself, I met people that I hadn't seen for many years on some of these walks anyway. But I prepared to an extent anyway, and gave a little talk on the history of the various sites, and some of them were from the medieval era, like Campbell and Trianach. Others, Baspa Langish is from the Neolithic period, and Popelheen from a sort of roughly the same period. Doon and Steeker again covered a number of eras. There was the Bronze Age site initially, but then people came along in the Middle Ages and built over it. So I think we had quite a good cross-section of the sites of interest in North Uist. I think looking also how it tied in with people's welfare and well-being and the use of Gaelic anyway. But I think just the very fact of people getting together, making time for themselves on an afternoon and coming together, and just a sort of shared experience of the walk, I found that very kind of meaningful, I think. And of course the Gaelic, we had a very hard-line Gaelic policy about it, that we just wouldn't speak English at all. And there were some people who said, people who didn't have English, and didn't have Gaelic, and that's a bit difficult to manage sometimes. You don't want to exclude anyone, but I think at the same time with Gaelic that we have to make spaces, for Gaelic, and to be a bit uncompromising about that if we want to keep it alive as a living language. We did have some handouts. Some we gave people a handout on the site, so that was in English, so people could follow what is going on broadly. So some people who came along said that they'd used Gaelic or they'd at least heard Gaelic when they were young, and they were just very pleased to hear Gaelic again. I think some people were encouraged to learn some Gaelic as well. So in fact, some of the people who didn't have Gaelic said, well, of course you can, come and do a Gaelic course you could learn. And some of them were quite keen, to find out more about Gaelic courses, and some Gaelic courses will be offered here over the autumn and winter. So we'd hope to see some people enrolling for classes. So I think there are a few things anyway. There was just the fact of being together, out walking, that feeling of camaraderie people have when they're out walking, and making time for themselves, and just the physical exercise as well, of course, able to use their own language, and hope to take pride. I think also taking pride in their local environment, and all the rich history of this this small island. So there's a few things I think going on which I felt were very rewarding, I think, to all of us. And I'd hope that this could be the start of more of these walks, that we could make it a regular thing, even into the autumn. There's no reason why we couldn't do more of this. So watch this space, I think.
Aire soon is more in time, thanks to Jess Wood and Dr. Heather May Morgan from Aberdeen University, who are helping Community to develop a community wellbeing survey.
Right, will I go first? I think I will.
Yeah,
so I'm going to introduce myself. So I am Jessica Wood. I work for the University of Aberdeen, and so the area that I have been involved with, and obviously Heather will obviously say the same when she introduced herself, is the sort of well-being aspect of the Aire Sund project, that obviously is the project of the North Uist Historical Society, and it's working with partners from our institute, University of Aberdeen, St Andrews, and University Highlands and Islands. So a bit about myself, a bit more, is that I work remotely for the University of Aberdeen, so I actually live myself in the Western Isles. I'm based in St Andrews, Lewis, the Isle of Lewis, just outside of Stornoway, actually, in Lurbost. And it's been really helpful, I think, and lended itself quite well for the work that we have done during the course of the initial work we have done, and hopefully for future work being a bit closer, perhaps, than some of us, such as Heather. Heather, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. And apologies, I'm in my car and there's just been a downpour, so I don't know if there's any background noise. It's really raining heavily. I'm Heather Morgan. I am a lecturer at Aberdeen University, and I live just outside of Aberdeen. I live rurally. I didn't realise quite, how remote the islands are by comparison until I travelled there recently for the project. But it's been a really interesting project for me in terms of my background is as a social scientist, as a qualitative researcher in and around health and well-being. And I've worked with communities before, but generally in the city and sort of locally. So this is the furthest away community that I've been working with. And it's been great that Jess has been located closer so that she can travel down more. But I've been fortunate enough to get across twice to North Uist, which I think has made all the difference in bringing to life the work that we've been doing.
So I suppose what we could kind of talk about is just how we initially were approached to take part on the project. So I don't know, Heather, if you wanted to kind of talk about that initial contact and that first.
Yes, so I think, you and I had been really expressing our interest in working on islands, Western Isles, and community type projects, because I know that we've discussed potential options and funding streams and things for some of your ideas and how we might take this forward. And then we were approached by Lewis Hu of the Ideas Fund in relation to an existing project that had been pitched that had this wellbeing element but didn't have any health related researchers within the team. So the idea was about it, they had partners that were on the digital aspects and the Gaelic aspects, but not so much the well-being aspects. And so Lewis approached us, knowing that we were interested in working in this area and experienced in working in this area, to ask whether we'd be interested in having a chat with the existing project partners to see whether we could work with them or contribute to the project and become part of the team. So I think we had that first meeting back at the end of 2021, where we discussed what it would be that we could bring, given that this is not a research project, given that this is a partnership around us, I suppose, working with the other partners in terms of our knowledge and expertise and the types of methods that we use to help share those the knowledge and skills with the community partners to see what would be useful to them to use in relation to the work that they're doing. And specifically, I suppose, to think about how we conceptualize and capture or measure. I think we don't want to use the word measure, but how we would conceptualize and record in some way the impact of the activities on well-being, and to explore that together based on our work in the university, but then doing that in partnership with the partners. So it's not us giving or telling or but actually working collaboratively, which I think we found really interesting and stimulating work.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think when we talked about we drafted some initial ideas about maybe some first workshops, and I think what struck me, and obviously well-being isn't an area that I would say I'm an expert in, but obviously it's healthcare research is our backgrounds. But what I found quite interesting when looking at it was just so many different definitions of well-being and the determinants of well-being, and in some ways how academic, well, it's quite academic, a lot of the terminology, and
Yeah.
I think for me, and what struck me was that I wanted it to be something that we could discuss with community members in a way that was easily understood and accepted, and how they could see well-being within their own lives. So the first workshops we talked about was about basically talking about some of those definitions and what people thought of them together, and then finding ways of exploring what well-being meant to people. So we thought of people bringing in objects, artifacts, photographs, also as a prompt as well. We talked about maybe activities or things people did maybe in lockdown that maybe helped support their well-being. So we thought that was a good sort of opportunity. Is that pouring with rain on the card?
Sorry.
It sounds like tins are being thrown on the hood of the car. It's quite like, it adds to the ambience. But that's what we thought. We wanted it to be in a way that's, sorry, I'm losing the word. The word for making it open to people, what's the word?
Yeah, I don't know what the word is, but you're right. I think we didn't want to shape it. We didn't want it to be too prescriptive. We wanted to shape it together, and I suppose by opening it out to what people's own, it's something that mattered to them. For example, you mentioned artifacts or stories. We didn't start with bring something that it was. Yeah, I mean, we did talk about the pandemic, didn't we? And something that. But it's something that was meaningful to people, each person to bring something that was meaningful. And as it turned out, I suppose they were supposed to, were like, the sort of touch points, but the icebreaker kind of thing. But actually they turned out to be the storytelling around each item in the workshops was very powerful, I think, and led to quite sort of relationship building, trust, sharing of emotions and reflections. Very quickly that happened in the initial workshop. We were both present in person, and then the subsequent online and second in-person one that you ran. So yeah, I think we kind of wanted to come with that sort of academic underpinning, in the sense that we worked with a student who'd done a literature review of well-being definitions and measures that have been used by different communities across the world. So looking at how well-being has been defined and captured by different tools and things that have been developed by different groups. And so we had that, she had done the review with our supervision, and we had that sort of academic knowledge of the literature and of these different studies that have been done in this area. So there was that, but it was kind of like not wanting to present that and make it overly heavy, but actually to start with, okay, how does this community feel and behave and think and consider well-being, and then kind of almost going back to those studies and looking at any similarities and differences and so on.
And what would be appropriate? I think so. That first workshop, as you say, it was like an icebreaker. It was opening up in a way that people would understand, and not being these definitions and processes that might not seem like it would be part of day-to-day life and how you live. I think that was quite important. And as part of that as well, obviously we asked, obviously we built up from that work some themes, emerging themes for well-being, which we mapped up, and they are actually on are in a poster at the school, and I think we will provide a electronic version that will get uploaded onto the digital platform as well, and that we wanted to use with the systematic review that our student completed to sort of inform the next steps of our work, which was then obviously looking at what would be, given what we've initially, the emerging themes of what was important to well-being for the community, what would fit for them in the well-being measures that Katrina, our student, had identified. So that was the the premise of the second sort of set of workshops, and it was all about presenting all the quantitative and the qualitative measures that have been used, exploring them together, discussing the pros and cons with each method as well, and looking at what was appropriate, and that was really good. It generated a lot of discussions just about the methodologies, and I suppose a lot of assumptions as researchers have about just automatically, so obviously creating these questionnaires, but then what people think, what community members think of them as well. So I thought that there was a lot of interesting discussions in those workshops as well.
Yeah, and I think especially around, and we're sort of careful around the word measure, because obviously when we're trying to capture the impact of activities, a lot of it boils down to the quantitative, measuring how effective is X on Y. So if and that's a kind of way that most things are approached in healthcare research. But you and I, we both have worked on sort of clinical trials and intervention studies that are very much in that kind of way of doing things. But I think we've both also been, and certainly my background has been much more in-depth qualitative research, and that's what you've been doing here, and co-creation work, where we don't start with the measures. It's like we start with the community, and then figure out what might work, and what would be valued, I think, is what the values are, and therefore what is valued, and not measuring things, not making assumptions about what it is that matters and what it needs to capture, but actually thinking about what the community wants in its reflection of itself and its activities. I think that was something that we were really conscious that we wanted to do, and develop something together with, that is really community led, really. I mean, it's difficult with co-creation, participatory reaction research. There's, collaboration and partnership working. There's all these different terms, but and it is, I think that's something that we've been found very interested in navigating, I suppose, the direction of travel and the working together, and how you share and incorporate comments, or sort of move forward, because ultimately the idea is to develop a survey that the community can use to I suppose evaluate its activities, but it's not just a sort of generic survey. It's informed by questions that have been used around sort of community activities, but it has also been adapted for this specific community, so it's their tool ultimately, and we're still in development of that, but all of these activities have really led to having a first draft and a working draft that we're now has been co-created, but we're now getting feedback on to kind of adapt further, I suppose, and refine.
And also as well, we also, as one of the methodologies that is identified from the systematic review, one of them was Photovoice, and using poems and art as mediums for capturing well-being or impact on well-being of activities. So we did, with the community, we piloted actually using a sort of adapted version of Photovoice for some walks that were conducted last month. So that was really interesting as well. So we did get some lovely reflections, photos and poems as well as part of that. And again, it was a way to show how you can measure, I suppose, if you are going to use the word measure, but show the impact on well-being in a way that's easy, like in a visual way, that and an impactful way as well. So obviously using all these different methods can be used for different activities that the community group choose to activity they do in future as well, that they perhaps maybe won't feel constrained to using one type of methodology.
Yeah, and maybe have the the confidence to adapt it for different types of activity, or to include or exclude specific areas or questions depending on what the activities entail. Obviously there were the walks, but even like the Digital Fèis that we just attended at the weekend, there's a range of activities there that and different age groups as well, and different sort of aspects of that were in focus. And so I think, you know, those kinds of things are coming together of people around the school and around the society, and the broader community. I suppose it's a dynamic thing, isn't it? Because it's not one set of people doing one set of activities. You've got kind of people that you've got your core people, and then you've got people coming in and out, depending on the activity types and the you know, their interests, I suppose, in different aspects. So it, you know, that the tools should be adaptable by the community. They belong to the community. It's not a kind of research. They're bespoke. You know, it's not been used in any other project or in any other place. So I think that's something it's unique.
Yeah. And it's important, as you say, that it reflects the local context and resources available as well,
yeah.
so that it can't be too prescriptive either
Yes.
in that.
Yeah,
that area.
absolutely.
So I think what I suppose thinking about wrapping this up as well, but like, do you be thought any sort of, has it made you think of your own, reflected on your own perhaps like work or personal life as well, being involved in the project?
Definitely. I think my experience of working with communities has been very different. So on a professional level, I think this has been, and certainly because of the location, because I'm not Scottish, but I'm not from the islands either, and that the whole travel, I think, was really symbolic to me of learning or being not out of my comfort zone. I don't mean that, but being, you know, and having respect for people who, again, you know, I've worked in lots of environments where I've gone into community areas and had to learn the culture, but I think it's been more about professional organisations. So it's been like police, prisons, health services. So actually going into a community where it's people that, you know, are warmly welcoming you into their community and into their lives and their stories. And particularly the Gaelic, because I don't speak Gaelic, and it's not, you know, something that I'm really familiar with, and the meaning of living on the islands, and you know, some of the meanings of these things, and how, I mean, I know people are all different, but I think it's kind of, you're in your busy day-to-day life where you're sort of shaping the everyday culture that you're part of, whether it's family or your work culture or with your friends. But I think it's just been completely new. So it's, and I think coming out of the pandemic as well, and then, you know, doing a lot of things online and then actually going to meet people, I think that it's been really important to have the face-to-face activities to actually consolidate that kind of partnership working and the spirit of working together. The other thing that's really struck me is stories and the writing and the sort of creative aspects as well, and trying to pay more attention to those, I guess, on a day-to-day basis, as part of well-being, not just thinking about exercise and nutrition and sleep, and, you know, thinking about it more roundly, I think. So those have been the things that have struck me. How about you?
Yeah, I definitely think it's made me think as well about things that I do, and actually I've been inspired somewhat as well by taking part in this project, just about the stories that have been shared with us, and what struck me as well, it's about keeping things alive in a certain respect. So I'm going to share a poem that I wrote, and it is about this project, or certainly some of the narratives and stories that were shared. So it's called Gathering Things Before They Are Lost. Imprints forever, losing part of my sight and myself if I don't. A sense of fear of things being forgotten, and a story never told. A song, a distant memory of lives lived and lost. How do you keep it eternal, if not in song or written word? Etched out so they can never be forgotten and forever be eternal. Life may be lost, but the stories will leave a kind reminder that the lives lost lived.
That's really beautiful, and I know how meaningful that is for you as well. Yeah, that's really lovely. I think that really captures the experience of the work, but the emotional labour of the project as well, and of the person and the personal being really drawn into focus in the work. Yeah, that's lovely.
But yeah, but certainly it has. Yeah, personally, I've felt that being able to express yourself in different ways, and how valuable that can be to your well-being. And as you say, it's not just in these prescriptive ways of lifestyle and exercise and, you know, the XY number of minutes a week, etc. That there are more holistic ways to look after your well-being as well.
And noting the collective aspects of that, not just about the individual, but actually the community, and doing things together, being together.
Thanks to Dr. Alan Miller and Dr. Ian Oliver from St Andrews, who are busy digitising our heritage, our identity, our language, our place.
We're pleased to be talking about the RR Sund project. I think we're probably about half the way through it, and it's a really interesting and exciting project to be involved in. From our perspective, St Andrews, we've been working in this area for a while, looking at using digital technologies to make cultural heritage more accessible, and also to allow more people to become involved, kind of democratise the processes. And for this project, we kind of started from the idea that, or the understanding that, engagement with heritage and involvement with heritage, it is important for well-being. It's important for the well-being of individuals, and it's important for the well-being of societies and of communities. It helps people have a sense of place, and it helps people feel part of a collective and place in the world. And so what we wanted to do was to really look at how we could use digital technologies, in particular virtual reality, to achieve these things, to improve well-being and inclusion in the community. And the way in which we've done that is to look at three areas. We looked at three types of heritage. We looked at objects and artifacts. We looking at places, and we're looking at intangible heritage, stories and songs. And this weekend really epitomises what the project has been all about, because what we've done is in this school, a whole bunch of people have come together bringing artifacts that have historical meaning for themselves, and we've used some pretty advanced techniques to make 3D models from those. So that is good for preserving them. If something happens to the artifact, then we always will have this record, and also promoting them because they're digitized and they can be online, and so it becomes more accessible for people to be involved with them. So we have those objects being digitized, and it's been really great, the numbers of people who've been coming in and so on. But accompanied with that is, you know, what's important about an object is not just its shape, but also the stories that and the context for it. And what's been great is the people have been bringing them in, and also they've been then having a chat and recording of the videos. That Sharon's been doing that, so that's been about the object. So that's been great. So that's one thing. The other thing that we've been working with is these Gaelic walks, and we've focused on Sticker, and Sharon and Ian have spent a fair amount of time pulling together materials to make a really nice kind of touchscreen exhibit which lets you explore the history and the stories and the place of Sticker, which is used to be a sort of Iron Age fort on a island in the middle of a loch. So that has kind of like explored how we can develop digital representations of places and walks and so on, and a lot of that work has been in Gaelic, so that's been good because it's like sort of reinforced that aspect of the project in terms of strengthening language. And then in the afternoon yesterday evening, people from the local Fèis came along, mainly teenagers, singing songs, playing the pipes, playing different instruments, and so we managed to capture and to record those sort of aspects of intangible heritage. And in the process of doing this, from the St Andrews perspective, what we're wanting to do is to create a sort of archive and a set of exhibits which preserve and enable more engagement and more participation with the heritage, cultural and natural, of North Uist, both by the communities that live here, the schools, the local museums, the commonetry, the historical society, but also making it available more widely, so that visitors to the island can get an idea of what the culture and the heritage of the island is. And it's been great working with the commonetry and with Aberdeen University and with Mary in doing this, in bringing this together. There've been lots of volunteers involved, so it's kind of been a privilege to be sat here in the school, which is going to be the new heritage centre for North Uist and the North Uist Historical Society.